Hi, welcome. This is Amber Johnson with Helping the Good People. Here to talk about domestic violence 101. That's what I call it. So welcome to my home. Forgive me, I do smoke still. That's my last vice, guys. I quit everything else. Literally, 7 years sober of alcohol, at least 2 years off of my medication, and since November off my medical marijuana card. I don't even take ibuprofen anymore. So here I am, sane as can be, open to all possibilities. I am smoking in my house today, though. Got my coffee, I've burned my sage. I got my music on in the background, and I've got all of my research. This is some of the stuff that I want to go over with you. This topic that I'm doing today is giving you more of an enlightenment on statistics, on the effects of long-term domestic violence inside the home, going back as far as childhood. So there's a few things that I found that stick out to me that I'm going to go ahead and just read to you guys. My posts recently have been more of a plea of what has transpired in my life with my family, not understanding how the whole entire cycle even got started until I was sitting in jail forced to read books. And of course, I'm a reader and I'm a researcher and I Google everything. I'm a curious little bee. But because of that, my knowledge for domestic violence grew so large, and my experiences of childhood and what has happened in my life with my children is a cycle. And this cycle needs to be broken. And there needs to be more resources out there for families, for men, women, and children. They said, Amber, if you want to change the bill, you want to change things, you have to go back to the beginning. Well, I did. And it was created by women. And back then, the men were not talking very much. They didn't go out and tell people about their feelings and what was going on. And also in marriages, when the abuse started, it didn't matter because they were married. So no matter if they the men got raped, they couldn't talk about it. They were raised differently. It's called genetics. It's called history. It's called the way their parents were brought up and their parents before them. So you see the cycle. Well, I too went through the cycle of sexual abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. I was a runaway and lived on the streets here in Tucson since I was 10 years old. Then I got pregnant with my oldest daughter, who also went through that same cycle with my ex. And the life continues. And now my younger children are going through that. Except for now, I can't get legal help. I'm fighting back in legal ways, in every way legally possible. Trying to understand not only the cycle, what needs to be done, and how I can help others today. So let me jump right into reading this, because my video has to be shut off after about 15 minutes, so I'll probably do this in increments. Let me start by reading a little bit of facts, okay? It's called Google That Shit. My friend laughs at me, but he tells me that all the time. Google that shit, Amber. My therapist tells me, Amber, you little researcher, in the end of your resource and your research and all this other stuff, I hope you're going to be a paralegal someday. Domestic violence robs victims of their fundamental right to maintain control over their own lives. Individuals who are abused live in fear and isolation in one place they should always feel safe, their home. With tremendous courage and strength, they struggle each day to keep themselves and their children safe. Isn't that the truth? Child abuse and domestic violence often occur in the same family. Researchers have found that 50%, you see that? 50% to 70% of the men who frequently assaulted their wives also frequently abused their children. Now you plug in men and women abusers. Did you know that there's only maybe 10% of women abusers out there? That's the only reason why it's not reported more. And I'm meeting more men who are victims now than I ever did in my whole entire existence of my 40 years. That really makes you think. That's a statistic. You can look it up yourself. Children, are 1,500 more times more likely to be abused in homes where partner abuse occurs. Domestic violence may result in physical injury, psychological harm, or neglect of children. There is a definite relationship between family violence and juvenile delinquency. These children have a 6 times greater chance of committing suicide, 24% greater chance committing sexual assault crimes, and a 50% greater likelihood of abusing drugs and alcohol. You see now why more assistance needs to be in COPE behavioral services in all of behavioral health. And all they want to do is put us on drugs. They're not going to the root cause. One of the most tragic outcomes of domestic violence is that, more than half of the young men between the ages of 11 and 22 who are in jail for homicide have killed their mother's batterer. Children growing up in violent homes do not need to be physically abused to take on violent and delinquent behavior. It is enough to witness their mother's abuse. Now, I can only tell you from my own experience and my own story that over a 5-year period, when I moved in with my ex-abuser, his 2 younger children that were already in the home, were 6 and 8 years old. I not only watched their father chase them around with bats, screaming, calling them pieces of shit, fat asses, but over that period of time, he abused me and made me out to be the bad guy in punishment and everything else. While I was being raped and while I was being abused, I drowned myself in alcohol and pills, and also became the victim and the abuser, I guess, in a way, if you look at it. I didn't know how else to get out. But the result after I left is what will shock you. After I moved out, I found out that my daughter-in-law, my stepdaughter, who's now 19, became suicidal at 16 years old, tried to kill herself. Her father abused his power, got her out of the psych ward, and made her go skiing for a week. And she became suicidal again at 18. His son, who was 8 years old when I met him, is now 21 years old, strangled me at 17 while the father watched and allowed it to take place. Then I found out that my son, my 11-year-old, actually witnessed his brother, the one that strangled me, strangling his sister, and had been doing it to her as well. Do you see what I mean about the cycle of long-term abuse now? This is my story, so I'm sticking with facts now. That is showing you just one story, which is mine, of what I witnessed and what the children witnessed and endured and now are having happen to them. I'm not going to allow my 9 and 11-year-old to be like this either. Signs of abuse. Individuals involved in an ongoing abusive relationship are more likely to have multiple injuries, repeated bruises, and broken bones. They are more likely to have frequent doctor visits, frequent headaches, chronic, generalized pain, pelvic pain, frequent vaginal and urinary tract infections, gastrointestinal, stomach and intestine problems, and eating disorders. They may also exhibit more physical symptoms related to stress, anxiety disorders, and depression. The locations of injuries in women most commonly include the head, chest, breasts, and arms. During pregnancy, the most common locations are the abdomen and the breast. I'm listening to my music. That is just a little bit of my research into long-term effects of domestic violence. There's another packet. This says, symptoms children may have while witnessing. Physical symptoms, prenatal symptoms, infants. Let's see what else is in here. Behavioral symptoms. Teen dating violence. Ooh, even teen dating violence. Just so you guys know, I found this. Let me see if there's a website on here. Found it on Wikipedia under domestic violence on children. Okay? Anybody can look this up. Wow, there's just so much information in here, guys. References, witnesses from infants, the effects on witnessing of infants, toddlers. Oh my goodness, man. Role reversals, post-traumatic stress disorder, anger. The seriousness of domestic violence has to be stopped, guys. The voice has to be heard, and it has to be given to all the behavioral health services. The police need to be retrained on how they handled it, because a lot of victims are actually sitting in jail right now. They got beat up for years, and they fought back, and then the abusers say, oh, but I didn't do it. I have a good job. I have good standing. I have lawyers and judges and money, and I didn't do it. And of course, the abusers are sitting there hysterical, freaking out, trying to tell their story. And because they're like that, they arrest the victims. I know, I was one of them, sitting in jail. I got into even looking into the FBI and statistics. Statistics on international corruption squads. Public corruption. Okay? Child pornography victims. Yes, sexual abuse is also a part of this. Domestic Violence 101 at your service. Stay tuned for Domestic Violence 102. This is Amber Johnson in Tucson, Arizona, telling my story, not anyone else's. I'm going to be stating facts, statistics, and how I have won these cases, learning law, learning the ARS codes, filing these charges, personally going up in front of a judge as your own advocate, and winning some cases. Let me show you one other thing here. Here is my CPS record going back to 1998 that shows how many times I have called CPS. Okay? This right here is my lawsuit that I filed protection orders against for the assault, the strangulation that happened when they made me a victim. And I spent 3 weeks building a case just to win in a court of law with a protection order. It took me almost 2 years to get this lawsuit, to find out that they illegally dropped it, and I still have the case. Do any of you guys know any lawyers out there that can help me with this? Because my children are still suffering. I've got a pile of cases here. I've got evidence and witnesses to 3 different cases. I have lived here since 1985, never been convicted of anything, and now I have 9 charges, and I get threatened, and my children have been threatened. I've written letters to the governor, the senator, attorney general's office, every single news station in this town. I've talked to every lawyer, conflict of interest. Nobody will talk to me, and no one will hear our stories and believe and listen to me or my children. So now I'm putting it out there. This is Amber Johnson with Helping the Good People, here to help you stand up against the corruption. The domestic violence has got to stop. Our voices need to be heard. And I will not stop fighting for what is right. I will not stop speaking my truth to defend my children until we are together safe. All we want is to be left alone, to live our lives in peace. That's it. How hard is that? Thank you so much. Stay tuned.